Internet! Today I'm actually going to review a game. I know that sounds crazy because I haven't done that in forever, but you know, every once in a while I have to break away from the monologues and just talk about a video game. And today is Nobelia on the CDI. Now right off the bat, some of you might be thinking, the CDI? What's that? It's an interactive CD console made by Philips, and originally was supposed to be some sort of partnership with Nintendo. It was going to be similar to what the Sony PlayStation eventually became. So actually, if you have heard of the CDI, you probably know it for games like Hotel Mario or the 3 different Zelda titles that are on it. But they were terrible. In fact, a lot of the games on the console are terrible, or at least subpar. Because that should actually be what I really say about the Zelda games. They're subpar. They're not necessarily terrible, they're all definitely playable. I've absolutely played worse. But I'm getting way off topic. The point is, the CDI is a failed, miserable console that no one's really heard of or played. But someone out there decided they were going to make a new game for it, and that's what I'm holding here. The person is TW Byrne. I don't know if that's a person or group, but that is what the collective that made this are called. And I guess I should actually talk about this game. First and foremost, the music is incredible. I've probably been playing it in the background. If not, I'm failing as an editor. But if you just take a listen for a second. It's pretty great music. Like, that's just a very epic sounding music to have. Like, just for the intro, it really sets the stage for the game and makes you know that you're going into like an adventure. You know, it's similar to something like the intro to The Legend of Zelda, where it sets the stage for a grandiose epic adventure, or at least as much of one as you could have in the retro game era. And speaking of Zelda, the gameplay of this is very similar to Zelda, as well as Bomberman. Because it is the top-down adventure game where you go around this big, somewhat open world in an attempt to just solve puzzles and progress further, but it also has the Bomberman aspect in that you eventually get bombs that you can place, and there are upgrades that will give you more bombs that you can place and a larger blast radius for your bombs. There's also a variety of enemies that show up. Like I said, there are a bunch of puzzles to solve. And there's a lot going on here. It's really interesting and really fun. I'm sure there's footage up here of some of the puzzles, but there's a lot of times where you'll have to try and dodge or outrun enemies. Or maybe you have to time things correctly because there are things in the background that are, you know, shooting bullets, or move in a specific pattern, or do whatever they do that you need to time and dodge and get out of the way of. So I guess in addition to being similar to Zelda and Bomberman, there's also a little bit of Adventures of Lolo in there too. It really, with all these different influences, they kind of got the best of every world on here. Like, it's a very coherent and fun game. I played a good half hour of it, and the only complaint I have is that every single controller for the CDI is absolute flaming garbage. I'm not going to pretend to know why the console failed, but I would be willing to bet a large part of it is just there's no good way to play any of the games because every controller sucks. But that's not a failing of this game, that's a failing of the console. I don't know what else to say about the game. It's a retro game, so it's somewhat simplistic. You know, there's not a grandiose plot to talk about. There's no voice acting. The graphics are exactly what you'd expect of the era. So there's not a lot to say on any of those fronts, but the gameplay and the puzzles themselves are very fun and interesting. Everything is intuitive, but also challenging enough that you're not going to breeze right through it. You know, there's a very fair difficulty curve and level of progression to everything. It's a very great game. I definitely recommend this. I definitely commend the person that made it. I've forgotten how to speak. And if you're one of the few people that actually has a CDI and it's functional, and you have a controller that is also functional and you can get it to work, then definitely give this a try, because this is really, really good. And if you're the developer of this game, great job. You made a really cool thing for a console that no one's making indie homebrew games for, so kudos times 2. And that's pretty much it. So, kind of lame as far as reviews go, but here we are. So, I'm gonna go now. You've just been filled in. I love your faces. I'll see you tomorrow.